Well, pretty much on answers we've had in Parliament in the last couple of sessions, where we know that about £114 million has passed through from the Savings Bank indirectly through their subsidiaries to Community Credit Union, and we know from searches of Companies House that there are charges registered against companies in the Martillo Group. All we're asking is basically how much has actually been lent to that group. And Bolsonaro said in Parliament, Sir Joe Bolsonaro said in Parliament that he approves a lot of the funding decisions, but he won't share that information with us.
And you're calling on either Community Credit Union Limited or El Martillo Group to make a voluntary disclosure of loan amounts, rates and terms. Isn't this a commercial transaction that those companies could choose to keep private?
Yes, of course, they can keep private these matters as they wish to. But given that there is a real public interest in these transactions, I mean, it would be in their interest to voluntarily disclose. We know that Sir Joe Bolsonaro has been involved in making the decisions, therefore a Minister of the Crown has been making these decisions, and the money is coming down from Savings Bank. Now, what the people on the streets want to know is basically how much. That's it, really, quite simple.
The government has said no government-owned, affiliated or controlled company has lent any money to El Martillo Limited or any affiliated company. As you mentioned, it's previously said requests for funding by a local business can be passed to Minister Bolsonaro and then passed to the credit union to assess its feasibility. So are you then disputing whether CCU can be classed as government-controlled or affiliated?
Well, technically and legally, Community Credit Union or CCU is not owned legally by the government, but it is obtaining funding from the Savings Bank via a government minister. So you have a combination of a private sector entity and the government through the Savings Bank, who is facilitating funding to Community Credit Union, who are the ones making the loans. So when the government says no government entity or thing, of course, because they are not the ones making the loans, it's Community Credit Union making the loans using money which has come from Savings Bank. And I say money, as far as we know, of 114 million, we don't know how much has gone to that group. And again, we don't know if CCU has other sources of funding. So, but we're only looking at the public sector element of this transaction, and that is how much money from the Savings Bank is going to fund these private sector loans.
And are you concerned over money from the Savings Bank going to fund these private sector loans?
Well, this is an entirely new sort of activity. And Sir Joe Bolsonaro in Parliament said it wasn't even his idea to begin with. This is not part of his national economic plan. This was a group of businessmen that went to see him and said, you know, this is an idea, would you consider it? So it's something that requires careful management, because when you're lending to private sector companies, and certainly in the case we've seen, to buy other companies, I mean, the lending transactions are quite complicated and complex, and you need to know exactly what you're doing.
Is your concern that this ultimately taxpayer money?
Well, look, at the end of the day, the Savings Bank is guaranteed 100% by the consolidated fund, who is obviously the taxpayer. So, you know, I'm not wishing anything to go wrong. On the contrary, I want it to go exactly right, which is why I'm asking questions about how all this operates. Because at the end of the day, you know, there is a responsibility, not just for the taxpayer, but obviously to the Savings Bank to make sure the way things are happening is happening as it should, and that everything is in place as it should be. I mean, I was horrified to find out that, you know, I asked twice in Parliament whether there was a charge registered against CCU by the Gibraltar National Mint, and I was told that there was, only to find that there wasn't, but only seeing it registered in the last month. And this is meant to be covering 114 million of lendings to Community Credit Union. I mean, these are the basics. So my concern is, like, you know, if we can't get the basics right on that, is there anything else I need to know about? And how is this working, and who's exercising overall control over these arrangements? Because it's very important that everything is in place as it should be.
Is it only a question of transparency in your view, or do you object to this money going to El Martillo Group in itself?
No, not at all. Look, I have no problem whatsoever with the Martillo Group. I wish them well. I've never met Mr. Tapero, and I wish him well too. It's really a question of the management of public finances in the form of the Savings Bank, and that is it. I have no problem whatsoever with the Martillo Group and their operations and what they're doing, and I wish them well, because look, at the end of the day, you know, this is about making sure the businesses in Gibraltar thrive, and anything that supports that, that's good. But how the government is doing this, it just begs questions, because if they genuinely, seriously thought there was an issue about supporting businesses, all they had to do was be transparent. You know, say, look, we're announcing a 100 million fund. You can make applications on this website. It'll be considered by this committee, and then everybody will have access to these funds. But the way it's been done in this piecemeal, all I can say is behind closed doors fashion, it just begs questions.